ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country, around the world, in Ukraine, and anywhere you can hear my voice, we are back with another special Ukraine War Report and two very, very special guests, heroes, in my view, an important voice and story that the American public needs to hear and needs to pay attention to, one that really brings a lot of what we've been talking about for the last few months full circle. I am very honored and humbled and proud to welcome to Independent Americans the great and powerful Iryna Solomko and Adrian Bonenberger. Welcome to Independent Americans, both of you.
Hi.
Thanks so much
Iryna,
for having us.
I'm trying to get your name right. I'm trying.
Iryna Solomko.
Solomko.
Oh, no,
Thank
it's
you so
Bonenberger,
much.
right?
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
but now it's actually I can Solomko Bonenberger. Yeah, but I know it can be tricky to spell my name and last name. So I'm actually I don't pay attention too much here. So
Excellent. Yeah. Well, Bonenberger is not easy either. I say that, as a guy named Rykov, I know it's not an easy one either.
It's a mouthful.
It is. But I am really happy you could join us and to share your story and your journey and maybe issue a bit of a wake-up call to our audience and beyond. But I want to start by asking you both the question I ask of everyone. Where are you and how are you?
Right now, we're in Branford, Connecticut, so just outside of New Haven, off I-95. We're doing pretty well. It's up and down, depending on the news cycle, depending on what's happening with Ukraine. Iryna's parents are living with us right now on a tourist visa. We're hoping that we don't have to register them as refugees, but we got them out of Kyiv about a week after the war kicked off in the beginning of March. And they're actually upstairs. So if you hear any walking around, that's them. But yeah, I mean, so days are good, days are bad. It goes up and down. We're all just hoping this war ends real soon.
Absolutely. I wanna take us all around this journey that you're going through right now, and maybe start with you mentioned your family, and this is Mother's Day week. We're focusing on family, and I'm hoping we can bring special attention to everybody in Ukraine, especially the mothers and children. But can we start with your story? How did the two of you meet? Because I think the Ukrainian-American side of this story is underreported. I lived for years in Little Ukraine in New York City, in Alphabet City on 7th Street. So I grew up around the Ukrainian community in New York City. But I feel like that part of the American story is also underreported and not fully appreciated. But let's get into your story. How did the two of you meet?
Well, we met in Ukraine originally. I was over there to cover the conflict and the sort of impact of the war on Ukrainian society. Got over there for the first time in 2015, came back in 2016, met Iryna then, and we got married pretty quickly thereafter, and lived there until 2017. So I went on her radio program. We were talking about, I think, to your point, about the intersection of Ukrainian culture and American culture, Ukrainian American, but also democracy in general. We're talking about, a particular issue, gender equality in the United States, which is also kind of newsworthy right now. I was something that I never would be in the United States of America. I was a gender equality expert. I'm not by trade, but for the purposes of this show, we're talking about, it was early 2016. So the election of 2016 and the possibility of a woman president in the U.S. didn't work out that way. But
so Adrian, actually, because with the help of United States government, we had, at that moment I was working part-time as well, because my main job was on ICTV. It's like one of the big broadcast TV channel, but the other so we gathered together with journalists before Euromaidan, and we established this Hromadske radio. It's mostly like NPR here, and because we for me, independent media was always core for democracy and for normal development of Ukraine, and I was very pleased and happy that we had a chance to organize this Hromadske radio. So it's public radio mostly in Ukraine. And one of the programs that we had, it called Respect. It's about this female rights, and actually I can tell you we did great job. And even if you look like in this military perspective, so for the last couple of years, like Ukrainian women got much more, like even comparison with the United States. I mean, in real equality of like what they can do, like on this level. So yeah, and Adrian, and I can like I can excuse his appearance in the podcast because yes, he always feel a bit like shame when he's like, yeah, I came as a gender like equality expert, but I can tell you that like still like in Ukraine, yeah, we do not have like enough American voices, yeah, and
Right.
bright Americans who are coming. This is why when somebody is coming, like, oh, like in the past, yeah, like when I lived there, like came in Ukraine, of course, journalists try to catch and talk and understand and see like how things are going on there. This is why, yeah, it was a really interesting conversation. As Adrian mentioned, Hillary Clinton was running. I believe that the potential like vice president for Donald Trump as well could be women, so we discussed this as well. So was I don't know like how do you call this, work romance. It started
Right,
as a
right,
work
yeah, yeah,
romance.
yeah. It's a great,
Yeah,
it's a great love story, and I think those of us who've been to war know that some of the most amazing love stories come out of war and come out of tragedy, and the bonds that are forged there are incredible, and you all are living proof of that. And you're both really accomplished journalists in your own right, so it's I think Free Press Week around the world and day, so it's an important time to recognize the courage of the journalists who continue to serve. We profiled my friend Brent Renaud, who was killed in Ukraine, and there have been others who've been wounded and killed. But you all, are in a unique position, not just to experience this, but to tell the stories. Adrian, you're, an incredibly well-respected author and voice for our generation on so many issues. Let me ask you to take it forward. So we had Matt Gallagher on a couple of weeks ago when he just left. He went on this harrowing trip with you all, and he wrote about it in Esquire. He came on our show to tell that story. But can you take us through that from your perspective? When the war was starting, your parents were there, right? And you all went through a series of events that led you to get there and eventually bring them back to your house in Connecticut. Can you take us through how that went down?
Yeah, the last like coherent essay that I wrote, I published with the Daily Beast in late November of 2021, and it's the last time I've really been able to think like clearly about this and not emotionally. And I wrote just about how bad a war would be, essentially. And I said, we just need to stop this thing before it starts, because it felt to me then like there was some possibility we could stop it. And so starting in late November, we were talking about what's going to happen if there's a war like that in Ukraine. And actually, I would even go back a little bit for just a few months earlier than that for what shaped our response to the war, which was Afghanistan. So Afghanistan went all kinds of the wrong direction in a way that nobody saw. Nobody predicted it going badly. And then the response to that unpredictable badness was also bad. But nobody saw that coming. Nobody. And so one of my interpreters got stuck over there, and I basically corresponded with him, essentially like the advice that I had for him was like, don't go to the airport. It's dangerous to get there. And it ended up being a very dangerous place, as we saw with the suicide bombing. I said, if you can get your family out via Pakistan or Tajikistan, I mean, I guess like roll the dice there, or even Iran, someplace with a stable government, because once the government falls apart, you don't know what's going to happen. He got killed after the government fell apart. Not clear if it was the Taliban or one of these sort of like some tribal dispute or something, but in the absence of a state authority, when things fall apart, then what happens is chaos, violence. So I had that like not at the back of my mind, like all the way at the front when I was thinking about what Russia invades. We know they're going to be pushing on Kyiv. Well, if the war breaks out, it's going to be too late, probably. You're rolling the dice.
Right.
And so before, just with the threat of war, we're talking, weekly and then daily, like, what are we going to do? How are we going to look after your parents? And her parents, who lived in the northern part of Kyiv, which is sort of like the most dangerous part. We were not able to get them out. They didn't want us to come and pick them up. There were phone conversations that involved tears and shouting. But we did get them to agree to kind of make a plan to get to the suburbs if war started. And they were thinking about that. They were considering it. the war started, and within a couple days of the war breaking out, like the Russians had sort of forward troops in the outskirts, the northern part of Kyiv, a couple streets away from where her parents' apartment is, and and that was what convinced them to do their sort of bug out plan to the south. Once they got to the south, they were the southern part of Kyiv. They were a little bit more secure, so we had some time and flexibility. But we talked and we realized, we were like, they're not going to leave. Like, they're not going to leave Ukraine unless we come to get them. And so that's what we ended up doing.
And I would like to add, of course, that Adrian, I know why he is skipping this part, but like for a couple of months, it's like probably every night he was, every other night he was like coming downstairs for dinner. Like, I know how to, like, he was so much deep into Ukraine. He was so much deep into Kyiv. You even can imagine, like, sometimes even like I hate him, like, please, can you give me a break even for a couple of days? Do not discuss this with me because it's so personal for me. You're not talking even not Afghanistan, how to say Afghanistan. You're talking about my country, you're talking about Kyiv, and I can like, because this couple of months it was like a nightmare when we were waiting for this to happen, unfortunately, because nobody knows. Putin reject this. Even Ukrainian authority, let's be honest, they were pretty like they were not super like convincing people like, this will happen. Like, they think, no, everything is stable. And this is why I believe my parents as well, because, for example, my dad trusts the president, and this is why he's like, no, Ira, why are you telling all this bullshit? Like, nothing will happen. Like, no, Russia will never attack Ukraine. So this is why it was so difficult even for us to convince them to think about this, because it was like, yes, we had this situation on the east, we had Crimea, but people in Ukraine, majority of people in Ukraine refused to believe that Russia, brothers of Ukraine, who so savagely like attack Ukraine and try to take it under their control. So this is why like I saw how and I can tell, like, for me and for Adrian it was different level of emotional involvement. For him it was, yes, we need to save Ukraine, but for me it was a little different. And in one moment, so he was saying like, we need to go. If something had happened, we need to go to Ukraine. Like, we need to be there. And like when we discussed this with you at the very beginning, like, we have a son, and I know that we have obligation, like for him, as a parent. So we cannot like just be absolutely unreasonable and go to war, like, and fight there, even if we want to do this. So, but when war started, I remember, like, for the first couple of days, of course, it was horrible news about this soldiers in Zmiyny who were killed. Then we found out that they survived. Now they're like in Ukraine. But still, it was so many heroical like events, and like we were so deeply in all this stuff that I realized that we won't be able to stay in the United States during this period, and we need to go to Ukraine and help as much as we can, no matter what we'll be doing, like, I don't know, cooking, like, no, it doesn't matter. So we need to be there. And of course it was combined with like bringing my parents from Kyiv, because that was as well a very important mission for us, first of all, to convince them, but I believe, like, as soon as because they don't want us to come. And then when I said to my dad, I said, like, Dad, we bought tickets, we're coming. And he didn't tell my mom for 1 day, I believe. He just stand like for 1 day, not saying. And then my mom, Ira, I see something is you're planning something. She knew, right? That we have it.
They knew you were up to something, right? I'm glad you mentioned Snake. I've been wearing St. Javelin shirts every week on the show. So I've got, I don't know if you can see this one, but I've got the Russian warship "Go Fuck Yourself" shirt on, to another way of showing support. But I want to take it to another level. I think you're showing a great balance between the emotional and the tactical. And Adrian, you've done multiple combat tours post 9/11. You know your shit. Can you talk about kind of your strategic and tactical hat you put on? Because you've been outspoken, and I think appropriately, about the American failure in Afghanistan that we've covered at length. I've called it the great American betrayal of Afghanistan. And that, is still ongoing. But there was a loss of faith, right, in our government's ability to get people out. You saw that. you anticipated, like many of us did, that it would be repeated again in Afghanistan, in Ukraine. You couldn't trust the American government to get people out, so you did it yourself. Can you talk about how you put together and executed that plan with two of your buddies that then led to this trip to Ukraine?
Yeah. And, some of the stuff that you've talked about with other folks, with other guests on the show, and just in general in public, I think relates to this idea that I had. It's an energy that probably a lot of veterans of GWAT, or whatever it's called now, but not just veterans, sort of normal American citizens who are kind of so turned off by the partisanship and the extremism you see on social media, and to a certain extent in Washington, D.C., and people are just kind of sick of it. Like you said, you're sick of the failures of the most powerful government on earth, the power of the U.S. military. You're looking at what Russia's doing right now, which is supposed to be a powerful military. You're like, my gosh, we're orders of magnitude more powerful than those people are. We take this stuff seriously, but then being, trapped in the giant bureaucracy of it, and understanding that, like, okay, you can't depend on the United States government to do everything, not anything. It's a very capable institution, and again, a powerful institution, but you as an individual, as a citizen, have a lot of authority and autonomy to accomplish things that are important to you, within a legal framework. So specifically with the training thing, like Ira said, we're going over there. We knew that we were going to be over there for a couple of weeks. We really wanted to make a difference. Ira was already plugged in with a nonprofit that was helping with humanitarian aid, helping push medical supplies, mostly to the east, to Kyiv and Kharkiv.
Tactical medicine, actually, for our territorial defense forces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I thought, okay, what are the options for me? We're going to be there for a couple weeks. Fighting, not a real option, frankly. I'm also not in great shape right now. But even if I was in like terrific shape, Ranger shape, I don't know. 2 weeks is not a lot of time to kind of like jump on a helicopter and go to the front and play bang bang for a little while. Not even enough time for like a proper left seat, right seat. So I thought, besides which there's, legal questions, the legality of doing that, being an American citizen. So thought through it, talked through it with some folks. I was open to a lot of different possibilities manifesting when I got there. I tried to keep flexible. But the thing that seemed like the best opportunity was that made use of my skills, and also the skills of not just people like Matt Gallagher and Ben Bush, but Matt Gallagher and Ben Bush specifically, because we're a really great team. They're both terrific leaders, was to do training of territorial defense forces, these motivated citizen volunteers in Ukraine that were very analogous to probably the Minutemen and the American Revolution. Mm-hmm. And that idea, the idea of being autonomous, taking people who had a similar view, who wanted to accomplish something on an individual level, tactically, but something that would have strategic implications. This was like the perfect way to do that. And I felt that we accomplished that mission pretty well.
So you call up Matt and Ben and you say, hey guys, want to go to Ukraine and get my in-laws out? Is that basically the phone call? And while we're there, we'll try to make a difference. Is that kind of the phone call? Or can you talk us through how, what the phone call was like when you called these guys?
It was, when I reached out to them, I reached out to, I think, 5 or 6 people total that I thought would be game for this. And they were 2 of those, 5 or 6, I guess. And I said, we're going over to Ukraine and we're going to be training. Have a really great opportunity to make a difference. And I was flexible in that pitch to them because I wasn't exactly sure what that training was going to look like or what it would consist of. And Matt and Ben got back to me. I think they both said, I have to check with my wife first. The natural thing. I believe Matt's words are actually, my wife is going to kill me.
Right.
But I think I have to do this.
Right.
So or that might have been Ben. I'm not sure. I don't want to put Matt.
So once you get there, it's the early days of the war. Can you talk us through how hard was it to get your folks out? I mean, the bureaucracy of it, right? Talk about linking up with them, and did you meet at their apartment? Did they come to you? And once you got them, how hard was it to get them back to Connecticut? Because this is a process that millions of other people are going through right now too, right?
But actually, we're pretty lucky because my parents they are having U.S. visa, so it's like because this is not their first time in the United States, so they visited us a couple times, couple years ago before COVID. So as like when we just moved here, and this made like things much easier because we don't need to wait. Yeah, we don't need to apply for visas. The most trickiest thing was to convince them to leave. And then, of course, to bring them like from Kiev to Lviv, where we're staying. But like I have a older brother, and actually, like we discussed this with him, and I told like Max, you need to bring them here, and then just bring them here, then we will take care of the rest. And it was a couple of options, because one option was because at that moment it was, I don't know, like March 5th probably, or 4th, but the fights for Kiev every night we were looking for this like news about some attack, some, I don't know, air paratroopers as well, like was trying to like land, like in Kiev as well. And the road wasn't safe as well to drive. So, and we discussed the way, like probably they can take a train, or like either or my brother will bring them. But train was not an option as well, because it was, I don't know, like thousands of people on train station trying to take the train. And my parents are not super old, but they senior people already, and they have some health issues. My mom is still like blood pressure. This is why we were so like worried about her as well, because I know like she's so easy to like so it's very easy to like to unbalance her like emotionally, and it's immediately like jump like with the blood pressure. And they actually usually road from Kyiv to Lviv, it's like 6 hours, like but it took them like probably like 36 hours instead. Yes, because it was huge traffic on checkpoints, because I will repeat, it was a plus minus, it was a bit like mess at that moment, because nobody knows, nobody knew what happen. So like people will just try to put checkpoints every like two checkpoints on the entrance, like and exit from the village. It was really tough, like, and at the night you were not, I think it's still this way, it was like martial law, so you were not curfew, you were not able to like drive at the night, so they weren't able to like drive for during the day. So we try to find some a place to stay in Khmelnytsky. It's like a town, city, not like probably not how many, like 200 kilometers from Lviv. And this is why like it was very intense, 36 hours. And I remember like when I just because once we were arriving, we went with Adrian to discuss some like training stuff, and I wasn't able even to see them like once they arriving. So I remember how I came back to the apartment, and so my mom and I was finally able to hug her. It was such a relief. And I saw how my dad actually like they immediately look so much older, like this war, like this trip, they took so much, all the stuff took so much from all Ukrainians. I read like a lot of people like from Bucha, Europeans, they like, just today I was reading this like post from my friend who live in Bucha, and she saw, like I saw the person like in this marshutka, it's like little bus that you can commute from Kiev to Bucha. And she saw like your old friend, she told like, oh, you look so older. She told, you look so older as well. So it's like, it's very...
So you got them to Lviv, and then how did you get them from Lviv to Connecticut? Did you go into Poland, or how did you get them out? Okay.
Because we flew by ourselves. We were not able to fly directly to Ukraine, so we flew to Krakow, and then people whom like our friends mostly met us like in Krakow, and we drove through border. It was as well a very emotional moment for me, because it was not only for me, I believe probably Matt, and everybody was really like, it was very tough to see all these people on the border, who were crossing like checkpoints from Ukraine to Poland because it was thousands of people. It's mostly seniors, women with like kids, with dogs, and they just were walking. It was really painful to see this. It was like first picture of like the war that we saw actually approaching to Ukraine. So we crossed the checkpoint and then we drove to Lviv because it's not super like long distance. It's about like
Right.
I think like it's less than 300 kilometers from Krakow to Lviv. So, and coming back to your question, yes, so we bought the tickets, the same flight as we had, like Krakow, New York, and so this is how we. I'm telling you, the most like tricky part was to bring them from Kiev to Lviv. This was the most.
I'm so grateful that you all are sharing this, because I think this is the side of the story that most people aren't hearing, the personal stories, the family stories. Adrian, you're great at talking about the personal stuff, but also about the political and macro stuff. You talked a bit about the status of your in-laws here. What is their status, and what do you think it should be? Because you're great at also making policy recommendations. So, what is their status now? What do you want it to be, and what policy changes do you want to see for families like yours if you had the ear of President Biden for a couple minutes?
That's a tough question. Their status right now is they're tourists, and their return ticket is for July. And so we're all kind of living in this fantasy land that that's all they are, and that they'll be heading home by July. Everyone wants the war to end.
If I may add here this very quickly. So for our family, it's not an issue. So my parents want to come back to Ukraine. So
they don't want to stay here.
This is the only desire that they have. Like, and every time they're watching just like, and that asks me, can we change our tickets? Can they probably come back in June, not July? So this is like the notions that they have like in their brain, because they want to come back to Ukraine. They're not refugee here. They're just staying with us. Yeah, but the situation is not for every family. Is probably somebody want to stay in, Adrian. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you've done great. Kristen Rouse has done amazing sort of advocacy work for Afghans too. I mean, it is really odd to me that like folks like my interpreter, people like you and me could say, hey, this is a good person. They'd make a really terrific American. They're in line with our values. The things that we're doing in Afghanistan were legitimately aligned with American values, culture, democracy. This isn't the Fifth Columnist or something like that. Believe me, he's one of the good.
Right.
And I think the Ukrainians actually have the Ukrainian American diaspora here in the United States and Canada actually have a better mechanism for vouching for that, in a sense, because they're already plugged into the political apparatus. Right. I don't know if Afghan Americans are as plugged in, which could have been one of the issues there, plus the concerns around terrorism or whatever else, the Taliban infiltrating or ISIS infiltrating. But with Ukrainians, it's, I think it's fairly easy because most Ukrainians have a cousin or an uncle or a brother or a sister who's already in the US who can sort of facilitate that. I mean, I think in general for policy, like we do need to have a more flexible mechanism in the State Department for taking expert advice and taking recommendations in. It doesn't need to take, if I can get, like 5 other people like myself from the 173rd, from 3rd ID, from somebody from the US Marine Corps, somebody else from the Air Force, who all say over the course of like 7 years, this is a good dude, we should bring him in. That shouldn't take a whole lot of effort on the State Department's part. So I don't know where the breakdown is there. Like, I don't know if we need more folks working in the State Department. I don't know if we need like a crisis response team to flex to a country like Afghanistan or like Ukraine that can quickly stand up, a mechanism for vetting people who need to be, who are refugees, who need to leave Ukraine, who don't have a home to go back to, like people from Mariupol. That might be something.
Yeah, we need it to work, right? I mean, that's the stark difference we're seeing now too, is how much it's working for. Sorry, go ahead, Iryna.
Yeah, I would like to ask, because like I can tell you this, like, because I'm covering these topics, like, and of course I'm super aware about this. I can tell you that now, like, U.S. government already like done a lot. So because like they have a couple project like for Ukrainian refugees, yes, the people who have, as Adrian mentioned, relatives here, they can like sponsor like their relatives coming here, and all like the people who already been in the United States when when the war started, they can they can legally stay here for like 18 months and have ability to work. So it's actually a lot, but I believe definitely like and so it was a big problem when the US embassy left Ukraine.
Right.
And it was even not in Poland, it was in Germany. So people who want to apply to visas, they need to go to Frankfurt, I believe. So that was a huge problem actually for Ukrainians. And at that special moment. So now I'm really pleased to hear that like they're coming back for now to Lviv, not even to Kyiv.
Yeah.
Yes, it's Lviv. But this is very important stuff. And we finally have an ambassador as well. It's important, because we have not had ambassador like in Ukraine for, I believe, for 3 years at least. So this is like things that can be improved actually, and should be, because if you want to help Ukrainians, you need to like at least organize the place where they can apply for visa, not to go to Germany to do this. So this is important, I believe.
I want to come back to that and ask you all how people can help, but I think the point that we were getting to about the American bureaucracy not working, right? You have to fight a war, you have to fight for survival, then you have to fight the American bureaucracy, which in Afghanistan I've described as like the DMB line from hell, right? And if you don't make it to the front of the line, you die. And that was what happened to far too many of our allies and friends. But now with the situation in Ukraine, it's accelerated, it's opened, it's more flexible. Now, that could be that we learned all our mistakes from Afghanistan, or it could be some of the factors you talked about, or it could be politics and racism and other factors. But the contrast is pretty stark, and I think, Adrian, you're in a position to see that better than almost anybody. I've got 2 of my Iraqi interpreters that are here in the United States that are thriving, that have families that are doing well. I've got one that we don't know what happened to him. He may be dead, he may be gone, we may never know. But I think what we're seeing is that if the American government wants to try, and if the president wants to focus on it and not put it in the rearview mirror, we can make things happen a whole lot better than we have before. So let me ask you, I wanted to touch on one thing. Iryna, you mentioned your brother. Is he still there? Or what is his status? And can you give us any read on what's going on with him and the folks that are still there?
Yeah, actually, he's he's in Kyiv, so he probably spent like 1 week with us in Lviv, and that's like very hard, like very hot. Yeah, when Kyiv was super hot spot, and I was so happy that he was with us at that moment. But he came back because he's not in the army, because he's working for this Ukroboronprom, so this like military corporations is providing military system and selling weapon. So he actually, and he's in charge of GR, like government relations there. So his work is essential now, and so
he can't leave the country.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's not. It wasn't even about this way. We never discussed that he will leave the country. So the question was how he can be the most useful. Yeah. And but his family, they're not in Kyiv, they're in Lviv. But unfortunately, like even yesterday, it was again shelling of Lviv, and it was they don't have electricity now. Part of Lviv doesn't have water. So unfortunately, there is no safe space in Ukraine. And this is why when somebody asks me, where is your brother, or where is your rest of the family, it's probably safe there. I said, no, there is no space in Ukraine. And safe. Even because Uzhhorod, we have only one city that wasn't under the shelling for 2 months. The name is Uzhhorod, Transcarpathia. It's really, really on the edge of Ukraine. But yesterday they hit even there. So not Uzhhorod, but there's some villages in Transcarpathia. So this is there is no safe place in Ukraine now, and so this is why I have a lot of friends there as well. And of course, a lot of people already came back to Kyiv. They want to have their life back. So this is their most the biggest intention. Just yes, and if you look, I'm so admire actually looking how people try already to bring Irpin, Bucha back to life.
Yeah,
this demolishing city towns, but people, they're coming, they're planting the trees there, they're planting flowers. They want to bring all their life back, and this is really touching for me the most.
I think it's been an inspiration to the entire world. And it's also been a gut check moment for, I think, so many people in this country that talk a good talk about loving and defending their country and asking themselves if they would go to the same lengths that you have gone to, that your parents have gone to, that your brother's going to now. I mean, sometimes you have to explain to Americans, yeah, they're of age, they have to stay, and they want to stay. And I think that's something that our generation of Americans, especially Adrian, hasn't been forced to face. We volunteered, but for those who haven't, they've never had to really answer that call. So I think it's an important gut check moment for all of us and an inspiration on what it really means to be, putting your life on the line for freedom and for the values that we hold dear. So I think it's really become such an inspiration, but we have a responsibility to stay focused on it. And maybe that takes me to a final question. And I hope you guys can stick around for a couple of extra questions for our Patreon members. We'll take it in a different direction and get to know you a little bit better for our Patreon members that help us keep this going. But a final question is, reality. You guys live this. We're around it. I feel like the American public is already kind of starting to turn the page. Right? Now that Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned, the summertime is going to come. You're both journalists. You know that stories tend to lose their momentum. And I think it's up to all of us to keep this in focus, no matter how long it goes, because it's the fight of our time. And it's about so much more than just Ukraine. But what do you want the average American who's watching this in the news, maybe doesn't have a family member involved, what do you want them to think about? And what do you want them to do? How can they support this fight in Ukraine right now, wherever they are?
So since coming back from Ukraine, and this is something that I first saw in Ukraine, but I've really pulled together here in the U.S. And again, is something that you've spoken about in the show and you've written about and talked about. The kick that I've been on is a local kick, local politics, local community involvement. And that's what Ira was talking about too, with Bucha, with Ukrainians. The revolution that's happening in Ukraine right now, it's been happening in one way, shape, or form since the fall of the USSR, has been both an individual relationship with the government and a relationship with their local community. And the big thing in Ukraine, the big sort of, people talk about Ukraine being a corrupt country. There are elements of the Ukrainian government that are corrupt, mostly legacy from the USSR and Russia before that. But the trend is toward less corruption. And it's all because of decentralization. It's all because of empowering states and empowering local towns and empowering the best people in those towns to run them, to collect taxes, to pay for things like roads. When I first got to Ukraine, there were a lot of towns that had really lousy roads. But even by 2018, the road systems were vastly improved and improving, because as it turns out, and I'm on my local town RTM, the representative town meeting, that's sort of like the weird New England style, city council, basically. Yep. And so I'm on my RTM, and we've got a town budget of $114 million. We're going through budget right now. The big vote is next week. And there are 10 to 15 people in every town meeting. Many of them are retirees, and they've got a lot of time, and they go through line by line through that budget, and they ask hard questions about where their taxpayer dollars are going, questions that can't be asked with the same fidelity at the state level or the national level. And I think the key to all of this is the system that we have. We're not doing a great job at the state or the national level, but all the state and the national level stuff works because tax collection is at 99% at the local level, because there are still roads, because there are these communities. That's what Ukraine is trying to build, and they're frantic for it. So I hope that people understand that the Ukrainians are basically like us. They want what we have, not the fancy houses or the fancy cars, the systems where they get a chance to say what they think without having to worry about getting hauled into the forest and killed. And they have a chance to spend money on things that they know people in Europe and the United States get and have, like school systems, like roads, like police departments that aren't corrupt, all of those things. So the Ukrainian people are like us, and we're like us too. We have a lot more than we probably even know. And for folks who haven't traveled, outside of the US, man, take a trip somewhere else, anywhere else. That would be
I would even say that right now they're better than us. And they you know, right now they look a whole lot more American than America does right now, given the way we've been divided and corrupted, and you know, we're not really in a good position to question anyone else's level of corruption right now, given the last couple of years. But Iryna, any final thoughts for you, for the country, for
Yes.
anyone listening?
Yeah, I would like to like answering your question.
Please.
I really hope that because as Ukrainian, I really I'm very vulnerable when somebody like some Americans repeating this Russian cliches, Russian narratives about Ukrainians, that like all this like bullshit that was putting in the brain for decades, like even since USSR. So when I heard this, like it's very like it's like I don't know, like a rather red clothes for bull for me. And I really hope I'm hoping that like this fight, yeah, this true, finally give Ukrainians chance to get rid of all this like cliches and myths about them, showing what they stand for, who are they, show a real face of Russians, not only Russian authority, but Russian people, because this is important. And I deeply believe I was really surprised when I heard that like Americans believe that it's Putin's fault, it's not Russian people's fault. And I think it's like a very short-sighted approach to the problem, because people are responsible for this as well. Like Russian soldiers were raping like Ukrainian women, like in Bucha, and kids, like and killing civilians, not Putin by himself. Or if you will hear all the conversations that Russian soldiers having with their mothers or with their wives, like I like to repeat this again and again. I don't know whether the Ukrainian American audience heard this. When wife is calling to her Russian soldier and saying like, I hope you're raping Ukrainian women, yeah? When you will be doing this, use the protection, use the condom. So this is conversations what they are having. And I want world to know about this. I want to understand what this threat is. And I want to world to see Ukrainians from different perspective, seeing them as a brave, like, I don't know, very pro-European, like cool people who are fighting for the independence and showing all world how you can protect your land in 21st century, excuse me. Not like in 20s, but nowadays. And like I don't know, 3 months ago, it looks so like bizarre and unreal, and now we're facing this.
I think you know I'm not one for silver linings, but I think that there is an amazing outcome, which is people are seeing the true heart and soul of the Ukrainian people. And I think you're right to challenge the Russian people as well. I mean, if you look back at the U.S., yeah, Trump was responsible for a lot of things, but a lot of Americans made Trump possible. And in the same vein, you know, Putin is obviously responsible, but so are many in Russia, and we've got to hold everyone accountable for their dastardly and criminal behavior. And I think that's the next phase. But also the next phase is, in my view, you know, Ukraine inspiring the world and looking at what the world can be. And I've seen the Klitschko brothers and others saying that, you know, Kyiv can be this rally point for the world, and I think it will rise from the ashes, and already is. And we're going to try to shine light on that as much as possible. And the two of you are an amazing story. You're true heroes, a love story, a family story, a Ukrainian story, an American story, an independent story. You kind of bring it all together. And I'm really thankful and honored that you could spend some time with us. I know you're going to stick around for a couple extra questions for our Patreon members, but thank you for all that you do. Happy Mother's Day. All the best to your family, and please keep us updated. And until then, stay vigilant, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Privileged to be with you.